I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar on how to build a successful employee resource group with Barclays. Please be advised that this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded onto the member portal section of our website. This session will focus on Barclays' global employee resource group strategy. And to this end, I am delighted to welcome Hannah Awonuga, Director, Global Head of DE&I Colleague Engagement at Barclays and Progress Together board member, who will present for the next 15-20 minutes. This will be followed by Q&A. Should you have any questions, please input them into the chat box on the bottom right of the screen. In the interest of time, I will consolidate these and cover questions verbally at the end. Over to you, Hannah.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. Thank you for the introduction. So just really quickly, again, my name is Hannah Awonuga and I'm a Global Director at Barclays. And I have global oversight of our employee resource groups. I'm really excited to be talking to you today about ERGs because it's been quite a topic at Barclays for the last probably 18 months to 2 years. So a little bit of a backstory about our employee resource groups. We actually have 12 employee resource groups. We have over 25,000 members across our group. But our first ever ERG, which used to be called a network, was our Christian Forum. Our Christian Forum has been running for 40 years. And for that a long time, it was just a group of colleagues coming together from a religious perspective. Sometime later, now the next one to be birthed was our gender ERG, which we now call WIN. But then since then, we have gone on what we have described as an evolution. So I have some slides to share with you. So I'll go to the slides and I'll talk you through actually how we've come to building our employee resource groups over the period of time. So as mentioned, we have been going for a number of years now, and at the end of 2021, we had 7 diversity networks across the UK, US and APAC, and we had 24,000 unique members. Our networks at the time were just what we described as small communities of interest that came together with a common goal to discuss challenges, experiences within their demographic. The 7 ERGs that we had was WIN, which was our gender network ERG, Spectrum, which is our LGBT ERG, REACH, which is our disability and neurodiverse ERG. We had the multi-generational ERG, Embrace, which was our multicultural ERG, and then we also had working families. So just to explain a little bit around the multicultural, multi-generational ERGs, they were what we called umbrella ERGs, where actually there were a number of different groups that sat underneath that. So for the multi-generational ERG, we had Emerge, which was our kind of young talent, new to organization ERG, and Evolve, which used to be called Midlife. And as part of the evolution, we actually changed the name from Midlife to Evolve because actually people didn't want to always associate with having a maybe midlife crisis. So we evolved and changed after speaking to people. We also had the multicultural ERG, and that incorporated the Black Professionals Resource Group, the Asian Professionals Resource Group, the Latin Professional Resource Group, and all of the faith networks. Now, again, that was kind of one umbrella structure. And so as part of our evolution, and we called it the evolution to employee resource groups for a reason. And if I just take you back a little bit around the life cycle of a colleague group, usually they start out as affinity groups. You may be familiar with this language. They are small groups, communities of interest, people that come together, and then they evolve to kind of networks where they're a bit more structured. You know, there's a clear kind of goal, there's clear interventions and activities. And then they evolve to ERGs, which, and you'll see through this presentation, starts to give them a bit of a different perspective, but also a different lens to the organization. And so we went from 7 networks to 12 employee resource groups. There is another layer called the business resource groups, and that's where actually they are connected directly to the business, and they are kind of really working with the business to drive kind of diversity, equity and inclusion. Now, at the time when I was thinking about the naming convention and actually the structure of our ERGs, I really wanted to ensure that I didn't lose the colleague aspect of this. So for me, going to BRGs, business resource group, just felt a little bit too far, because I didn't want to lose the fact that this is about colleagues, for colleagues, run by colleagues. And so we landed on employee resource groups. That alone was a real intentional move for a number of reasons. So, you know what happens when you make a change. As soon as you make a change, people ask why. And so that was a great opportunity for me to then reposition the ERGs to the organization. Now they're saying, well, they were networks before, why are they now ERGs? What's the difference? And that gave us a real opportunity to redefine what we mean by ERGs in our organization and make sure that we bring in people on the journey when it comes to building our employee resource group infrastructure. So as part of the ERGs, I've mentioned they had 7 and we went to 12. And so you may be wondering, well, what happened there? Why did you increase the number? And that was another intentional move. And I'll talk you through and you'll be able to see kind of where we landed. But we wanted to ensure that everybody felt included as part of our ERGs. And sometimes we found actually through feedback and focus groups was, when you have these umbrella ERGs, they don't always feel like they have the same visibility, connection to the business than some of the ERGs that are standalone. And so we recognize that. We recognize that the business was also seeing them in that way. And so we took away the umbrellas and elevated all of the ERGs, all of the networks and forums into ERGs. Now, you will see on this slide that there's also something called networks, because we still recognize that there are still smaller communities of interest that come together that might not now qualify for what we describe as an ERG, but are still there. We have a few. We have the environmental network. We have GAIN, which is the graduates, I'll get this right, graduates, apprentices, interns network. We have the cycling network. So we have still smaller networks that still come together. But because we wanted to repurpose the ERGs, we wanted to reposition them to the organization, we wanted to make the distinct difference between what is a network, which is, as we've defined it here, defined as groups of communities of interest that come together to create a sense of inclusion and belonging, with an employee resource group, which is defined as large diverse communities to amplify the unique challenges and nuances of diverse groups at Barclays, whilst actively contributing to the core business objectives to make sure that the right business decisions for our clients, our customers and communities. So that distinction is very clear, but it was really intentional for us to make that distinction. We wanted to make sure that the ERGs not only were there to build a sense of inclusion and belonging, but also there to ensure that we are doing the right things for our clients and customers in them communities, and that we are amplifying the voices. So then we created a purpose. This was really key for us as a global organization. We wanted to make sure that we were able to have one clear purpose across the organization. I'm sure you'd be able to relate, but often when it comes to employee resource groups, we find that one group's doing this and one group's doing that, and there's so many different things happening. And so we wanted to bring it all together with one core purpose. And so every single ERG, every single co-chair now recognizes the purpose of our ERGs. It's defined as the purpose of our ERGs is to amplify the voices of our diverse workforce, to better understand the needs of our colleagues, our clients and communities, by enabling our resource groups to create a sense of inclusion and belonging through one mindset, strategically contributing to business objectives. So it was really thinking about, okay, well, what is the purpose of our ERGs? We are all clients of the world, right? And so customers of the world, should I say. And so as we go about our daily lives, we experience things. And so what I experience as a Black woman may be different from what a person who identifies as a gay or lesbian person experiences in the world. And so whilst we have that inside our organization, we wanted to recognize that actually it's really key to building that across our business. So as we started to think about this, as we started to think more about actually what is it our purpose and what is our mindset, we wanted to think about actually how do we start to translate this to the organization. So think about how we actually build this into our one mindset. We started to think about what do we need to do to bring this purpose of the ERGs, not only here today for our ERGs, but also for the business. We wanted to make sure that our goals, our DEI goals and strategies also aligns to the work of our employee resource groups. So along with our purpose, we also wanted to make sure that everybody has a strategy that we can all fall behind. Now, granted, each ERG will have their own activities, own things that they will be working on. It's not only about what they're working on individually, it was also about how do we come together collectively to help each other, but also help the business really drive our DEI agenda forward. Now, I always say, it is not the job of employee resource groups to fix diversity and inclusion in your organization. I describe ERGs and co-chairs and committee members as agitators. They are there to help us understand the nuances and challenges of our clients and customers and our colleagues. And so this strategy that we put together for our ERGs was allowing them to really align their work, their activity to a core strategy that is a global strategy. So I'm sure you're familiar with attract, retain, develop, and engage. For us, we felt that this was a really nice way to start to bucket some of the activity and work that's happening across the ERGs, starting to think about how does the work that they do contribute to attraction at Barclays, thinking about how they work with our talent acquisition, how they go out to schools and colleges, how they really make Barclays, in our case, a place that people would want to come and work. And so in the attract bucket, we gave everyone the opportunity to tell us, to share with us, to think about actually what does that mean for them? What does attract mean? How can the ERGs actually help us attract more diverse people to the organization? And so things like supporting attraction of underrepresented groups through partnerships with our talent teams, working with talent acquisition to drive attraction campaigns and outreach, promote the network to all colleagues and business to raise awareness and to build a sense of connection in the community. So we have a number of partners that we work with externally, and we also have a number of schools and colleges, both in the UK, in the US, and in APAC, that our ERGs connect with. But what happens when they get here? And so retention also was really important. That's where we see the bulk of our activity from an ERG perspective, whether that is through listening groups, whether that's through events and speakers and workshops. It really is an opportunity to help understand how we can retain our diverse talent across the organization. And although there are some big strategic things happening to ensure that our leaders are supporting their teams, to ensure that there is development that actually caters for diverse communities, it was also about making sure that we have that our ERGs really play a critical role in that. And so whether that is upskilling or workshops or giving feedback or creating listening groups, the retain pillar of the ERG strategy was really for the ERGs to think about what they can do. And then develop, and you may have seen in our 2023 DEI report that we have a number of initiatives that are made up from our ERGs that really speak to develop. One in particular is Ascent, which is a development program created by our employee resource group to really focus on the development of our Black professionals across the organization. So to create a network, so through the develop pillar, it's about really thinking about how we can provide tailored and focused support for our ERG members, whether that is from a development perspective or whether that is from a guidance and support perspective. We've also got career coaches, we've also got self-development things, whether that is mentor programs and sponsor programs. And so that would all sit in the develop pillar across for our ERGs. And then the final pillar is engage. And so here it's thinking about how do we ensure that we're working with our external partners. So we have a number of partners within our DEI group. And so utilising the partnerships that we have already, but then acknowledging that there are particular partners for each of our ERGs that may, be beneficial for our ERGs to tap into. So here is the ERG resource, here are the employee resource groups that we have today. And I'll talk you through kind of where we got to with a few of them, and actually we introduced some new ERGs as part of this as well. I'm conscious of time, so I will speed up, but please, Monica, let me know when my time's up, because I can talk for a long time. So we have WIN, which is our gender ERG, supporting gender across our organisation. And one of the big things that we've done over the last 2 years is really ensure that our trans women feel supported as part of our WIN Gender ERG. We moved from being a women's initiative network, WIN used to stand for Women's Initiative Network, and moved as we recognised that in order to be inclusive, we have to think about gender more broadly. And so this has been an evolution, and not an easy one, but one that we have been consistently supporting our ERGs with. And then we have REACH, the Disability, Mental Health and Neurodiversity ERG. Again, similar to WIN, that's been on an evolution itself as well. It used to be the Disability ERG, but recognising that mental health and neurodiversity are also very distinctively different, we wanted to make sure that people felt seen and recognised across that ERG. We then have our Barclays Military Resource Group, our Working Families Resource Group. And then here, as mentioned to you before, we moved away from the umbrella of Bridge and elevated the Emerging Talent, and evolved the Midlife Progression ERG. We then have APRG, which is Asian Professionals Resource Group, Latin Professionals Resource Group, and Black Professionals Resource Group, which was formerly Embrace. We elevated them to ERGs in order to recognise the differences across the different groups. We then this year introduced the Multicultural and Faith Resource Group. We recognise that although their culture really intersects across the race ERGs, culture is still very distinctively different in some aspects. If you are Spanish or French, you identify with your culture over your race. And so it was really important for us to make sure that people who identify with their culture first had a place to really explore and to share their experiences of their culture. And we saw this a lot in APAC, as you can imagine. In APAC, in APAC, they would class themselves as Asian. So it's not about race, it's about culture. In France and in Scotland and in some of our European countries, it is more about their cultural nuances than their race. And so we wanted to acknowledge that. The faith one was an interesting one. It didn't start out as an employee resource group. We felt that the faith networks were smaller communities that come together. But as we have evolved, we've recognized that there is a real intersection between faith and culture. And so actually we brought them together as the Multicultural and Faith Resource Group to be able to acknowledge that. And then we have Inspire. I created Inspire in 2021, and it's definitely one close to my heart, although I love all of our ERGs. But Inspire is our social mobility employee resource group. As we launched socioeconomic inclusion last year as our 6th DI pillar, Inspire came along with that in a recognition that actually people who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds need a place to be able to share experiences and learn and meet people who come from their backgrounds. And then we have our LGBT ERG spectrum. So just really quickly, because I do want to give opportunity for people to ask questions, a few other things we did as part of this evolution. We introduced a co-chair performance objective. That was really important to us because we wanted the ERGs were telling us that the work that they were doing in the ERGs were not being recognised at their performance reviews. And so this performance objective that is automatically updated into their performance platform allowed them to have a real in-depth conversation about the work that they do within the ERGs. We created a line manager guide, which again came from feedback. It was a comprehensive line manager's guide about how to support an ERG. Talks all about all of the different roles, from committee members to sponsors to co-chairs, and then how leaders can really support them. And I have provided that, so you will be able to take that and have a look at that. We also introduced the recognition site. So every single co-chair will receive a exceptional achievement award at some point in the year. That is the value of £300, and it's just a gesture of gratitude, I suppose, to say thank you for the work that they do. We also did a number of different things. We created a toolkit, and then lastly, we also introduced the Business Liaison Forum. I'll quickly go through this before I pause for any questions. But the Business Liaison Forum was an opportunity that we saw to bring the business and our ERGs closer together. The idea of the ERGs is that they would all nominate a representative from their ERG, someone in their committee, to become the business liaison officer, and that person would attend a monthly meeting that would bring the forum together, and we would invite the business to come and share products and solutions and policies with this group. Now you can imagine, because we have 12 employee resource group, that group has become a very diverse group, and so the business come and say, we're working on this policy. Some real great examples that we've seen off the back of it is that we have been able to contribute to the family leave policy through this forum. We've been able to, the transitioning at work also has come to the forum. We've had the customer team has come to the forum. So one of the ones that I really love to always talk about really quickly is the Spectrum, our LGBT ERG, actually worked with the customer team to help build the MX function into account opening. So if you are a client and you don't identify as Mr. or Mrs., you can now identify as MX, and that was a direct kind of direct output of the work that Spectrum had done with our customers, with our customer team. So that's a great example of where you're using the employee resource group as a resource to be able to really drive customer and client outcomes. So I will pause there because I'll stop sharing because I have shared and spoken a lot, and I'd really love to understand more about questions that you may have. So I'll pause and hand over for questions.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for the insightful presentation. For the audience, please be advised that the polling function will now be enabled. This allows you to share feedback, which we can use to improve and develop future sessions. Whilst you complete the survey, as Hannah said, we will run through a few questions. First question, so what can allies do to support an ERG, even if they are not a part of that community?
Yeah, fantastic question. So a number of different things. Our ERGs are open to everyone. They are not just for the group that it may be named as. And so get involved, attend, join the events, come to the events, play a role in the committee. One of the things that we've done with our ERGs over the last 18 months is really encourage people to participate in the ERGs who may not identify with that particular ERG. So as an ally, join the committee, join the leadership team, become a sponsor. We had some development sessions. We had 2 development sessions on Tuesday for co-chairs, and we talked about sponsors at length. And we talked about the key role of a sponsor and how they can contribute to better outcomes for the ERG. And so I would really encourage you to think about, if you're a senior leader can you take on a sponsor role to help use your privilege, your position and your power to drive the agenda forward? But if you're just somebody that wants to get involved, then actually, actively participate in the ERG is what I would say.
Thank you very much. How do we handle ERGs that may not be as open to members from individuals outside their group, i.e. a women's network that may not have much more participation from men?
Really great question, really interesting question as well, right? I think for us, our core values as an organization is underpinned, everything we do underpins by our core values: respect, integrity, stewardship, excellence, service. And so for us, we would want to ensure that we are an inclusive organization, and so we wouldn't want to make anybody feel that they can't be part of the group. And so I would say, if you have a women's group that is quite closed, really, open the dialogue of male allyship and how men need to be involved in the conversation. I always say we can't have a conversation around gender without men. We can't have a conversation around race without white people. We have to be really inclusive in how we approach that. And so I would say, open the conversation around actually the value of having male allies as part of the gender network, and the contribution that they can make.
ERGs, in terms of how they are run, are they typically employee-led rather than organizational-led?
They are employee-led, so they are run by our co-chairs who are members of our organization. They are done off the side of their desk, which we absolutely acknowledge, but it's done from a place of passion, done from a place of wanting to make change, wanting to contribute to an inclusive organization. So yeah, they're run for colleagues by colleagues is what I say.
Brilliant. What were some of the challenges from embedding? So actually, many thanks for sharing, and I can see a lot of thought went into creating this structure. One, what were some of the challenges from embedding this change across the network and the organization, and how were they addressed? And two, are there still any challenges with this structure, and what mitigating actions are in place to help address these?
Yeah, so the first question around kind of what were some of the challenges that we faced, I think when any type of transformation is happening, you will receive questions. People want to know, I mentioned people asking, well, why are we changing from networks to ERG? I think the biggest challenge for us was really getting people to understand where we were going. And so therefore, for me, it was really important to continue to go back to the DEI strategy and making sure that people recognised that actually it was all part of the same strategy to drive an inclusive organisation. But the biggest, to answer the question, the biggest challenge was really getting people behind, whether that was leaders, whether that was co-chairs. It was really trying to get people to understand and build on the journey. And so we did focus groups, we spoke to individual leaders, we got sponsors, we went to councils, we really made sure that we didn't, it took me about 14 months to deliver. It wasn't a quick thing, it didn't happen overnight. It was a long process of socialization, conversations, meeting different stakeholders, going to HR Expo. We wanted to make sure that we did it in a really considered way. And so we took the time to bring everybody on the journey. I suppose some of the challenges now is about how do I continue to help the ERGs become more strategic? And so I mentioned that we did some sessions this week. We did 2 sessions with 2 external organizations around strategic delivery of ERGs. What I would love the ERGs to really get to is thinking more about actually what will our actions result in? So if we do this, what happens? So actually then what happens is that you start to become more strategic with your actions, because you're thinking, well, I need to be really strategic so I can get this outcome. And so I really want the ERGs and the co-chairs to just become more strategic about what their activities do and how it contributes to the strategy.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you to the audience for your very, very helpful questions. As we draw this session to a close, I'd like to thank our 12 founding partners: Accenture, Allen & Overy, Aviva, AXA, City of London Corporation, EY, Fidelity, Man Group, Paragon, Santander, PwC, and Schroders for their continued support. We look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at our next in-person workshop, which is taking place on Tuesday, 5th of September, covering actions to address barriers to progression. The link for this event is posted in the chat box. If you're unable to attend, please do recommend sending another colleague within your firm who may be able to. And thank you very much to those who completed the survey. Thank you again, Hannah, for your brilliant presentation, and have a lovely rest of the day.